My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Welcome to Legends and 70s podcast with me, the Cabbie. Joining me today is the Cabra King from Ormond Square to the European Cup final. I'm joined by the one, the only, Johnny Giles, for a trip down memory lane. How are you, sir?
I'm okay, Paul.
What did you do with that short pass, Johnny?
Well, first thing you do, get it under control.
Yes, absolutely. And then protect the ball.
Or if there's a pass on beforehand, take it.
You had eyes all over the place, Johnny. You were, I've always said with certain players, if football was a religion, you would be a prophet. Your first memories of the game of association football, growing up in Dublin, you come from Ormond Square, didn't you, in Dublin? That was your manor where you learnt your trade.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
I was born and raised. I was in Dublin in the time I was born in 1940. So I lived in Ormond Square, which was obviously a square. But in those days, nobody had cars, Paul. So we could play on any of the four sides of the squares. And of course, some of the neighbours would put us, go and play on the other side and go. But we played, but it was ideal actually for learning football at that particular time. There was no cars coming in and out. You could play down one side of the square, go to the other side of the square. And we had what we called a bouncer. Yeah. A bouncer was a rubber ball about twice the size of a tennis ball. So it was ideal for learning the trade of controlling the ball because it was harder to control than a football. Well, I didn't know that at that time. I was only a kid playing for a bit of fun with my pals in Ormond Square. But it was an ideal place to learn how to play football and control the ball.
But you started playing football or kicking a football even before that with your granddad when you was 3. He took you out to kick a tennis ball, didn't he? I got to say, John, your book, John Giles, A Football Man, the Autobiography, is an absolutely fabulous read. It's honest, it's superb, it's funny as well. And I did listen to a podcast when you said, well, if you were reading the book of me dad, it'd be a lot better than the book of me. Because your dad was a real character. And you were like chalk and cheese. But your dad was a pro player as well, wasn't he? And he was a character as well, wasn't he, John?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was. He played for Bohemians, which was an amateur team when he was young. And I believe he was pretty talented, but he got a bad injury, I think, and stopped him playing. But he was a character, a very well-known character in the football world in Dublin. Actually, he was manager of Drumcondra, which was a League of Ireland team when I was a kid. So he'd a very, very good knowledge of the game. Paul, really good and basic knowledge of the game, which was a great help to me when I was growing up, obviously, because I went to Manchester when I was 15. Well, when you go at 15 to any club, and especially Manchester United, you're not dealing with Matt Busby and Jimmy Murphy. You're playing, there was those days, it was the first team, second team, A team, B team, and juniors. And I was only 15, so I started off with the juniors. So where the knowledge from my father came into play, because at that level, you're not dealing, with people that know an awful lot about the game, and they can put you in the wrong way, on the wrong road. So I was lucky enough to have a good basic knowledge of the game at 15, that if any of the coaches were talking rubbish, I knew it. Yeah. And that was through my father. My father had a very, very good knowledge of the game. But he was a character, yeah.
And in the book, you said that you felt as though your father got more out of your football career than what you did.
I think he enjoyed it more in many ways. I wasn't a drinker at all. My father was very well known in Dublin as a drinker. And what they used to say to me, Dickie, Jesus, what a drinker. In other words, he never fell over. He never got into trouble. And he could still talk a bit of sense even with a good few drinks on him, So that's what he was noted for. But I think when like I got my first cap in Ireland. I not only played 2 matches for Manchester United at the time, and we got a good big. I scored a good goal. We were 2-0 down. I scored a good goal. We went on to 3-2. So he definitely would have celebrated that night in a big way. I was home with my mother and girlfriend at that particular time, but he'd be out on the town.
Now, was your dad's name Dickie or was it Christie? Because you did have an ability to change names. Jackie Carey, when he went over to Man United, we known him as Johnny Carey. Now,
Yeah.
I'd looked at Wikipedia and I'd seen Michael John Giles. Was your name Michael John Giles?
I was christened Michael John Giles.
Yeah, thought so.
But I was always called John. I think my father didn't like the name Michael for some reason or other. So I was called John from the time, but it's a bit of a nuisance at times on passports and that, Paul, because I went to without my passport somewhere anyway, and I was supposed to be Michael, and I said John, and I couldn't get through, Yeah. But anyway, that's what it was. Yeah, I was christened Michael John, but I was always called John. And not Johnny, funny enough.
Exactly, because I've listened to the YouTube clips and podcasts that you've done with RTE and over in Ireland, and they all call you John Giles, where in England you're most commonly known as Johnny. So where did the Johnny come from the John?
It just came from football. It came from football people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like when I got in the first team, first of all, but most of the lads are, especially the press, they put the NY on the end of it, you know what I mean? And that's what, but my family, funny enough, it always was strange with me because people thought I was being a bit snobby or something later on when I said, look, my name is John, because all my family called me John. Yeah. All the people that I grew up with called me John. It was only when I came to Manchester United and got in the first team that they put the Johnny on it. Yeah. But I never called myself John. My mother used to say, don't answer it.
That's the English press.
It was no big deal anyway, Paul. To be quite honest, it was no big deal. But it's just the people that family and friends of mine. It's always called John.
Now your upbringing in Dublin, football and Gaelic football in particular was the big game. Certainly, tennis was another English game that you loved, and you met your wife at a tennis club as well, and golf. So you almost was more English than Irish, and you were a corner boy as well. So talk us through that, John. You're growing up and going through secondary school, because you took a little bit of stick, didn't you? Especially from one teacher. Yeah.
Well, funny enough, my grandfather was English.
Right.
This is going back a long time when the British Army was in Ireland, and he married an Irish girl. But my grandfather was English, and he was killed in the First World War. So I never got to know him. So I come from a little bit of an English background, and also from a soccer area. Yeah. Because in Ireland, as you say, in those days, Gaelic football was the national sport, and anybody that played soccer at that time wasn't very, very well received. And funny enough, in school, I played Gaelic. I enjoyed playing the Gaelic. But Boxer Murphy was the man you referred to there. Funny enough, he wasn't a Christian brother. He was a lay teacher. And he gave me a hard time over it because I was known as a soccer guy. He actually said, you'll go to, or you'll be out football with all those corner boys. Corner boy wasn't a very nice person in Ireland in those days. And you think you're going to go to England to play football, But I got over him. He didn't mean anything to me. I knew what I was trying to do and what I wanted to do anyway. But it was the time and the place in Ireland at that time where soccer was very much not received well by Christian brothers and school teachers.
Absolutely, you did refer.
It was the English game, you see. It was the English game, and I'm going back to 1945, 46, 47. It's changed a great deal since those days, Paul. But that was the time. That was the climate that was in it at that particular time. But it never bothered me. It never stopped me playing football with my pals in Ormond Square.
And you're right, it was a terrible time. I mean, there has been terrible times in Ireland. And your mother and your grandmother were at Croke Park, wasn't they, on that bloody Sunday, that horrendous day. And thankfully, they survived to tell the tale.
Yeah, oh, my mother. Yes, my mother was my mother was a dealer. You used to call them a dealer. She'd bring all the fruit and sweets on the day to get into Crow Park and sell them on that day. And she was there on that day, and my mother was there as well. But luckily enough, they didn't get into any trouble in what was happening on the day anyway.
Who did you find was your biggest opponent, Johnny, whilst you were playing football? The lady whose door was open that burst your bouncer, or any other footballer that you played against?
Well, she was deadly to all us pals, because we used to play with a rubber ball, say, with bouncer, and and there were spikes around the square. So something I remember sometimes we just got together a few pence in to get the ball. And you come around and it hit the spike on the thing and it'd be gone. Yeah. So we didn't have that money to replace it. But and this lady, behind one of the goals we had, she used to leave the door open. And of course, a bit of bad luck is somebody scores a goal, it goes through the door, and the ball was gone. And then she'd come out with it in her hand and throw it to us, and we'd be all cheering. But she'd put a puncture in it. It was no good to us. And that was the bad days we used to have there. When she got a hold of the ball.
And there's a blue plaque there as well, isn't there? By the side of no ball games.
Well, it is now.
Yes.
Like in my day, you could play football, but funny enough, a few years ago, I got an honorary place in Ormond Square. Yeah. Funny enough. And just down from Ormond Square, there was another notice: no football allowed. And it's where me and my pals used to play football all the time. But times have changed. Now it's a bit of a yuppie place, Ormond Square, and there's a lot of cars around there that wasn't there in my day. It was a very working class area. But again, Paul, ideally for learning the basics, the trade of the game, controlling the ball.
Absolutely, and there's not many blue plaques that were given out. I believe you and Patrick O'Connell. Now they give him a bridge as well. So what happened to the Johnny Giles bridge?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not too bothered about that anyway, Paul. I mean, there's a nice plaque in Ormond Square, and that's
absolutely
that's good enough.
John, who were your heroes growing up as a kid in Dublin? Because you come from Cabbie, and that's the same district in Dublin that the great Liam Whelan come from. No. I mean, the English people.
Yeah, I didn't come from Cabbie. I didn't come from Cabbie, Paul.
Oh,
I came from Ormond Square. Ormond Square was about in the car now would be about 15 minutes to Cabbie. Cabbie in those days was a new estate.
Gotcha.
From the bad housing. There's a lot of bad housing in Dublin in those days.
Yeah.
And they built Cabbie was one of the estates that people could move out of inner Dublin. There, but I didn't. My parents stayed where we were. But Liam Whelan would have did come from Cabbie.
So, who were your heroes when you were a kid and you were playing in Ormond Square? Who did John Giles want to be when he grew up?
You can call me Johnny, by the way. It doesn't bother me in the least, Paul. No, I was. First of all, there was no television in those days. Yes. You might hear a bit of radio and that. So most of the matches that we would see, the big matches, would be the international matches, where Ireland would play, whether it be Scotland or Germany or any of those players. And our heroes were the lads, obviously, that played in the Irish team, and the captain in those days was Jackie Carey.
Yeah,
as you said early on, he was Jackie Carey and then he was Johnny Carey, and he was one of the greats. Yeah, he was one of the greats. He captained Manchester United when they won the cup in 1948. He was Footballer of the Year in 1949, and he was a great player. So me and my pals, he was our big hero. Now we had lots of other heroes: Tommy Eggleston, Peter Farrell, who played for Everton, Con Martin, who played for Villa. We'd lots of other Davy Walsh, who played for West Brom. So we'd lots of heroes from the Irish team, but we didn't see an English match. But we latched on to Manchester United mainly because Jackie Carey.
Yeah. Now you did say that you come over to Manchester United, a 15-year-old kid, and you did. But you'd also come over previously as a 14-year-old boy on a boat. And that's when you bumped into Duncan Edwards when he was eating an apple on a wall.
Yeah, they had a man called Billy Bean, who was a scout in Dublin, And he'd been watching me for a few years. And what they decided was that they would send me over to Manchester when I was 14 to make an attachment to them, because you couldn't go until you were 15 on a permanent basis. And I think they want to make sure that no other club would come in for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Schoolboy, as a schoolboy. But I always wanted to go to Manchester, mainly because, again, Jackie Carey, we followed Manchester United. And they decided to send me over at 14, which was a year before you could go on a permanent basis. Yeah. But Manchester didn't throw the money around. They didn't send me over on the plane. They put me on the boat. There used to be the Munster and the Leinster boat. Would go from Dublin to Liverpool. Yeah. And I was on the boat. I remember my mother, I think a mother pinned a pound inside my pocket because she was worried about me going. I never thought anything of it at the time, to be quite honest. But the only time I got scared, I made my way from the boat to the train. And it was only when I was getting into Manchester, about 10 minutes before I got into Manchester, I got worried, because there was somebody meeting me at the Joe Armstrong, who was the man who did that job, was meeting me in Manchester. But I never met him before, and he never met me. Yeah. So the only thing I was worried about, if we don't know each other, where am I going to end up here? Because I'm going to be completely lost. But he got me straight away. He knew I had a broken down old bag case, and he knew he was used to picking the kids coming to Manchester United up from there. So it was okay.
I've got to say, John, as a Birmingham City supporter, I wish you'd have ended up in Birmingham, because we'd have loved you at Birmingham City. but you did end up at Manchester United. What was it like playing and looking, observing the Busby Babes? I know that you wasn't particularly friends with them, but Liam in particular, in your book it says you were chasing him round with a bottle and you cut your hand on it.
Oh yeah, that happened. Well, there was a couple of Irish lads there. Tommy Hamilton was there, Liam Whelan was there, Joe Carolyn came later on, and I must say they looked after me really well, because I must have been a total nuisance for them. You know, I was only 14. But it was brilliant, Paul, because this was pre-season, right? So it was pre-season training, and I could watch the pre-season matches, practice matches. But all these players, when I went to Manchester United first that year, I didn't know of all the players there. I've heard of Duncan Edwards, and I knew of Liam Whelan, knew of a few players, but I didn't realise this was the Busby Babes' time coming onto their prime, where there was, like say, the first team played the second team in those days. And Bobby Charlton was 17, I think, at that time. And Bobby couldn't start. He couldn't get into teams, because in those days there were inside forwards. And the inside forwards in the first team was Jackie Blanchflower and Dennis Violet. And then you had Colin Webster, and they were all international players. Yeah. Where I saw Bobby come on at half-time, and he was sensational. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and became the great player he did. But I never heard of Bobby Charlton at that time, or Eddie Coleman, or Jeff Whitefoot, and Duncan Edwards, and all these players. So I was watching it where they were playing absolutely brilliant. And I was with the younger lads playing, doing my own little bit, you know, with the ball and all that carry on. It was brilliant.
But when you come back then as a 15-year-old kid a little bit later, your dad wanted you to take an apprenticeship as an electrical engineer as well, didn't he? So you were like learning two trades, where some of the other boys just focusing on being a footballer. But you learned an awful lot, didn't you, John, with those fellas that you worked with? So it was a great grounding for young John.
Oh, it was a great experience. Yeah. See, my father was the type of fellow, he wanted me to do everything. Yeah. He wanted me to be a great footballer. He wanted me to be a great scholar. Yeah. Right? And I was hopeless at school. Oh, absolutely hopeless. I was only interested in playing football. And also to learn a trade. Yeah. So I went in Altrincham, and it was a great experience, I must say. And I was obviously apprenticed to the Manchester lads, and funny enough, nearly all of the lads I was working with were Manchester United supporters. Yeah. But I had a problem early on, Paul, because I'd a thick Dublin accent, right, and they had a thick Manchester accent. I couldn't understand a word they were saying, and they couldn't understand a word I was saying. And I thought, how am I going to live in this country? But as it happens, it does happen. I got used to their accent and they got used to mine. And they were really good lads, really working class lads. And they looked after me really well. But that only lasted a year.
Yeah.
Right, because Jimmy Murphy and I was saying, I was going training on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, and I was never going to learn the trade, to be quite honest. I was never going to learn it. And Jimmy Murphy said, look, we're sort of wasting our time here. After a year, I was short of 17. He said, right, you come in full time, and then you can sign pro in November of 17, when I was 17. And that's what happened. But I'll never forget those lads. They were really, really good lads. Looked after me well. Took me to see one of my favourite singers at the time, Frankie Lane. Did you ever hear of Frankie Lane?
Oh, I do, Rawhide.
But he was one of my great heroes, and we went out to where they have all the I forget the name of the place now, but I went to see. They were really good lads, and I was very, very grateful to them.
Music and singing is a big part of your life as well, John. I've seen a few clips on YouTube where you've gone up and you've had your Bacardi and Coke and you've done a couple of numbers, Nat King Cole in particular.
I have to stop you there. It wasn't a Bacardi and Coke.
What was it?
It was a few Bacardi and Cokes. or else I wouldn't be doing this, Paul.
But you've got a good voice as well, John. You can hold a note. Eamon Dunphy as well. He can hold a note. You boys knew how to play and you knew how to party as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, funny enough, Dublin in the old days, they used to call them hoolies.
Yes.
And they'd be in the house and a good few drinks and always a sing song. I mean, it was a thing that we were brought up with. I had it in the international team after a match and that, especially after a good win. We'd have a good sing song. So it was part of the culture growing up in Dublin in those days. But I don't consider myself a singer. I'll have a go, keep the party going and that. But luckily enough, when I was manager of the Irish team, we had some terrific singers in it. Jerry Conroy, Mick Martin, Ray Tracy. They could all do a turn. Liam Brady. They could all do a turn. But it was a good night out, especially after like one of the matches now when I was first manager. We beat the USSR 3-0, which was a great win, and it was in the afternoon, so it was made for the evening. You're back in the hotel by 5:30, 6 o'clock. You got a full evening then, and good few drinks, good few sing songs. Brilliant stuff,
Two fellas that really changed your way of life, your philosophy, one or two other things at Manchester United, Jack Compton and Jimmy Shields.
Jimmy Shields was a pal of mine from Derry.
Yeah.
And we were in digs together.
Yeah.
Jimmy. And Jimmy was a really outgoing lad.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. I was very, very shy in that. So he brought me out a lot in that way. We were in digs together and then we got going.
Now, Munich was an awful time and you lost some of your friends. You didn't particularly know many of them, but Bobby was in the Munich air disaster. Dennis Violet was in the Munich air disaster. Thankfully, they survived. 8 players didn't survive, backroom staff, etc., and journalists, including the great Frank Swift. But it must have been an awful time. What was it like as a young kid? Because you'd not been there that long, and to lose people that you'd looked at. I think Roger Byrne, he'd wished you all the best when you'd signed your contract, but Liam was the one that you really had a connection, and I guess because Liam had come over there as a young Irish lad as well, so there is that connection. It must have been an horrendous time, and then Sheffield Wednesday was the first game, wasn't it, in the cup after?
Oh, it was dreadful time, actually. We were down at we were training at the ground. It was the youth team. I was in the youth team at that time, training at the ground. And then but Bill English, he was the old time trainer. Yeah. And after training, he said, look, I've got some bad news, lads. There's been a crash. But the way he didn't know, but we thought it wasn't a big deal. Yeah. We thought it was something happened. But it was okay. There was no talk of anybody being killed in the crash. And it's just when I got back to the digs, which was an hour or two later, that the news had come through that it was such a bad accident with players being killed. We didn't know that. I was in digs at the time, and what happened was there was loads and loads of funerals, Paul. And I didn't really know the lads, you know. I was a young pro at that time, and there was about 40 pros. So, and you had the first team dressing room and the second team dressing room. I mean, I didn't know them, you know. I knew them, but like Duncan Edwards wouldn't know my name, for example. Few of them did. Some of them were friendlier than others. Eddie Coleman was a very friendly guy, and that. Few of them. Then obviously Liam Whelan, because he knew from Dublin. But Tommy Taylor and David Pegg and Duncan Edwards, they wouldn't have even known me in the place. So it was a very, very hard time for everybody at the club, and particularly for lads like myself in digs, because we were going to the funerals. Yeah. That's all we did. We were told, don't go near the ground for 2 weeks, but we had to go to the funerals. And it was very, very, you can imagine what it was like in Manchester at that particular time. It was a dreadful time. Dreadful.
Absolutely, because they were one of the greatest teams that England's ever produced, and it wasn't just the flowers of Manchester that died that day. They were the flowers of English football as well, and never.
Yeah, but they were so young. They were so young, Paul.
Yeah.
You know, they were so young. I mean, the average age of the side was only 20, 21 at the time. You know, and I mean, they were a phenomenal team. I mean, you could have picked two teams at that time easily. I mean, Bobby Charlton was only just getting into the team at that time. And then Liam Whelan and Colin Webster and Jackie Blanchflower. Dennis Voiler was a terrific player. Absolutely. Terrific player.
Shea Brennan, he was the star of the first game, wasn't he? At the Cup game against Sheffield Wednesday. But you played a little practical joke on Shea, didn't you? You pretended to be somebody else, and he was so chuffed to be playing for Ireland, because he was the first one, wasn't he, that looked at the grandparents and was able to play for the Republic of Ireland. When did the Republic of Ireland become Republic of Ireland? Because when I was a kid, it was ERA.
Well, funny enough, they're only celebrating 50 years this year that the FAI became independent. Right. Of the 50 years this year. That's why they had a big match last year. I was over for it in Dublin against Belgium. It was a friendly match, obviously, but it was to celebrate, and they had a lot of players and different people at the match. I was one of them to celebrate the 50 years.
Oh my goodness!
1921.
Because again, when I was a kid, it was always ERA, and then all of a sudden it changed to the Republic of Ireland. But Shea Brennan, he was a good lad, and he was a pal of yours, and scored a brace against Sheffield Wednesday. You were watching that game on the wall. My dad actually went to that game. There was a lot of people from all around the country that got on coaches and buses just to be a part of that, just to be there. Man United borrowed players that were already cup-tied, but the rules were relaxed, so Manchester United could get a team out and got to the final, unfortunately. Got beat by Bolton Wanderers that year.
Yeah, well, Shea was, I was at that time in the A team and D team. Yeah. Along with Shea. And we were very good pals. Shea was very Irish in his way, you know, his parents were Irish. And one of the great lads, really, really very good to me, very friendly. And we played in the A team together, which was the third team. And, we knew each other very, very well. But I remember afterwards, Shea got in the first team, and we came to the same conclusion. I didn't think Shea was going to make it in the A team. And Shea didn't think I was going to make it. We were sort of going nowhere. But Shea played, obviously, in the first match when they were really strong. He played outside left, actually, and scored a goal in the match, Shea. So Shea became a hero immediately with the Manchester crowd. Now, he didn't last in the first team very long. He wasn't in the cup final or anything. But he did his bit on that particular day. And it was one of those nights which was very, very sad night, on sad occasion, really, Paul, although they won the match, you know.
Absolutely.
But Shea was one of the great. He was one of, he's talking about a man's man. Yeah. He loved to drink, he loved to bet, and he was really, really, he was very, very good to me. And he was good to everybody. He was just one of those great lads.
Now, you were still at United, and you played in the 63 FA Cup final for Manchester United. You didn't play in the Charity Shield game, and as a consequence, that was the last game that you played, wasn't it? Or sorry, you did play.
No, I played in the Charity Shield game.
Shield, but you didn't play.
Yeah, that's when I was left out of it. We were beaten 3 or 4-0 at Goodison.
Yeah.
So he made a few changes, and I was one of the changes. But,
Now that move, that young boy that's been a fan of Manchester United, instead of wanting to grow up and play Gaelic football like a lot of Irish young kids did, you wanted to play for Manchester United.
Yes.
That was your dream. To be shown the door, because it was a game against Tottenham, wasn't it, in a cup semi-final that you didn't have a good game, and Matt seemed to lose faith in you.
Yes. We played in the semi-final, and I was playing in the main position as midfield player. Actually, Bobby Charlton was on the left wing at that time.
To listen to the rest of this podcast, please go to www.patreon.com/SRBmedia.
Now's the time to make your milestone moment sparkle with 35% off select pieces from Blue Nile. Treat yourself to a birthstone necklace to celebrate an amazing birthday, or pick up a pair of diamond studs that'll elevate your outfit every day. Blue Nile's experts are on hand for any questions you may have. And with their diamond guarantee, you'll get the highest quality at the best price. Celebrate yourself or someone else today with 35% off select pieces at BlueNile.com. BlueNile.com.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.